Superhero fatigue. You've probably heard it before somewhere or somehow. I mean, why not? It's been bitten into our skulls one way or the other, whether it's from all the content flows from YouTube, articles, tweets, or just the industry itself. Superhero fatigue has become the new term for saying basically superhero movies are not good anymore. It's become the go-to for everyone to rationalize why they don't watch superhero movies. And damn, I'll say it's a fair point. But is that really the case? If superhero movies have become so boring, so bad, so uninteresting, so oversaturated, why are they still making more? Why are they still talking about it till now? Maybe the problem isn't fatigue, maybe it's something else. Maybe the idea of superhero fatigue is a misunderstanding or wrong in some way. Or maybe the term superhero fatigue is just a big lie. Now, I know, superhero fatigue isn't essentially saying superhero movies are bad or boring or uninteresting. The idea of superhero fatigue beats the belief that people are just tired of superheroes as a whole because they have been pumped out way too much now. And this is essential because back in the day, pre-Endgame, this was never the case. Superhero movies being bad was nothing more than a minor setback. Nothing really serious at the time. And it's fair because genuinely we had some good movies during this time period than bad movies. The early 2000s saw the rise of superhero movies with the X-Men movies, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, and Nolan's Dark Knight. A solid lift-off of the superhero genre, carrying on the legacy and keeping the spirit of superheroes alive after the 80s and 90s. Then with 2008 rolling around, we saw another wave of superheroes, a wave that was ridden by Marvel with the creation of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which began with Iron Man 1. This set the bar for the heights superheroes as a whole could reach, an interconnected universe all with different stories but all building up to something epic at the end. And that epic became Infinity War and Endgame. These two movies alone created more hype around the world, the kind that took the most biased, uninterested person, one who swore on his life he'd never be caught dead watching a superhero movie, suddenly in the theaters. Everyone and their mothers wanted to see these movies. Endgame alone proved that fact pretty well, since Infinity War left fans with one of the craziest cliffhangers ever. And as Endgame ended, no pun intended, with a snap, not only did this mark the end of an era, but also the end of a decade of storytelling, with the aim to birth something new, something that would take the MCU to even greater heights, or so we thought. Because the entire point of this video started with that snap as well, as the idea of superhero fatigue began to show its wings after this. You see, Marvel had the bright idea of thinking they knew what we wanted more than we knew ourselves. Heck, they made us believe that was the case, because after the pandemic and all that happened, which ended up not being as apocalyptic as we hoped, Marvel began cooking. And may I say, cooked a little bit too much and probably burned some things. Marvel had a ton load of projects for Phase 4. They began announcing projects upon projects, making us believe we were gonna be eating good. And it did seem that way. We can't lie that we were excited for this. It felt so good to be a Marvel fan with all these announcements, countless movies and series set to kickstart and end Phase 4. Fans got so excited, too excited even, that they couldn't quickly identify the problem yet to come. So with Marvel kicking off their Phase 4, they started with their streaming services, which welcomed the series like WandaVision, which was a pretty solid start, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, pretty enjoyable, Loki, What If, so many interesting series that made us believe that Marvel is actually going somewhere. Then with the movies rolled around, movies like Black Widow, which was fairly decent, Shang-Chi brought back hype to Marvel, a movie about a rather not so well-known character but still managed to capture hearts. Then Eternals came and seemed to shake the waters a bit, but fans still held hope for more to come. But nonetheless, this slowly began showing Marvel's downfall. People started noticing the inconsistency in Marvel's projects, their fondness now for quantity over quality, throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. The build up to Kang wasn't done properly as well. The multiverse wasn't exactly making things easy. It was just sucking the life out of the MCU. Quantumania, Thor Love and Thunder, the Marvels all spelled hope for the MCU's future but couldn't deliver anything. For some of these movies, it required having to go through a long array of projects, both series and part of movies, to understand what they were watching right in front of them. For a diehard or a slightly average fan, this is okay. But for a regular moviegoer who only makes up a big portion of what makes a movie boom, this was too much for them to handle. Pumping out so many things at the same time, leaving no room to breathe for fans or casual viewers, this became the foundation of which the idea of superhero fatigue was laid upon. As a start, the momentum that drove so many movies to succeed pre-Endgame was the MCU itself. The DCEU, who were suffering from serious inconsistency issues, were also pumping out movies at this time, which most of them weren't properly received as they couldn't create any real fact or value for audience to stick around. It was okay though, because because Marvel had their own movies to drop, which would certainly be better, and that was always the case for so long. Not only was it a sigh of relief when Marvel came in and proved why superhero movies were still important, it made for some fun comparisons for why Marvel is just better than DC, and that was always the trend for Marvel and DC fans for a very long time. But after Endgame, that reality shattered. Now people are openly expressing their thoughts towards superhero movies, both Marvel and DC. Complaints of Marvel's oversaturation and DC's terrible choices over the past years. Just basically releasing mediocre at best movies. As Marvel was going through their fair share of struggles due to their declining audience, DC was there adding fuel to the fire, spicing up the decline of the superhero genre. Movies made by DC that were advertised to be a kind of innovation in superhero storytelling fell so flat on their faces. The Flash, aiming to be a new start for the DC universe, ended up being a slugfest of very uncanny CGI. Aquaman 2, no one really remembers that movie. Black Adam wasn't really trying either. DC was so inconsistent that it threw fans off right from the very start, even pre-Endgame. Did they want to follow Zack Snyder's vision? Did they want to build their universe around Black Adam? Are they rebooting? Was Henry Cavill still Superman? Are they switching back to Elseworld projects or still sticking with their extremely failed attempts to build a cinematic universe? All of this culminated in the rise of the idea of superhero fatigue. But despite all this, on the other side of things, we can't completely say Marvel and DC has been in the ditch for so long, as some way and somehow they have been paying attention. They realized their folly, even if it took them way too long to figure that out though. But nonetheless, they did. They started slowing things down. And in a sense, there's no better way to explain that than with the superhero projects of 2025. This year has been somewhat of a good year for superhero movies in terms of audience and critic reviews of them. With various projects for Marvel and DC, there seems to be this rise in positive reviews of superhero movies. Thunderbolt, Fantastic Four, and for DC, Superman and Peacemaker. All telling unique stories, all trying to be better, distinct, to show that Marvel and DC at least is paying attention to their fans and their audience, that they are making an effort to fix their past mistakes. But even still, you can still see the decline in audience turnout to see these movies, and it's very much clear in the box office records. None, despite being well received, have reached $1 billion, which is ironic because if movies like this were released back in the pre-Endgame era, when the superhero genre was at the height of its game, they would have made serious numbers in my opinion. But this is the punishment Marvel and DC have to bear, because they lost our trust a long time ago and now have to gain it back bit by bit. In fact, this bleeds into future projects coming up. Unless they can build up hype and anticipation, there's fear that other future projects might flop just as well. So using this analogy, one would say that superhero fatigue is really a thing. It actually existed, still does, and will continue for a long time. That may be true, but I want to ask some questions. Is Marvel and DC the only superhero franchises out there? Do they speak for every superhero movie, anime, and story out there? Because from what I've seen, when people talk about superhero fatigue, they seem to only focus on Marvel and DC and everything surrounding them. But if superhero fatigue exists as claimed, if people really are tired of the capes and the cows, if we are exhausted by the idea of people doing extraordinary things with extraordinary abilities while wearing spandex, if that's what superhero fatigue means, then why are there so many fans of My Hero Academia, an anime about a boy in the world of superheroes trying to be the best, battling villains that toggle along the morality of human nature? Is it not about superheroes? Is it not a superhero story? Aren't people doing extraordinary things with extraordinary abilities while some wear spandex and some just look weird? Okay, maybe I'm not being fair. Not everyone watches anime, but those who do know anime is really good. So one with a good story about superheroes is definitely going to be a treat. In that case, if superhero fatigue truly exists, why do so many love Invincible? Is it not a story about superheroes? Are they not wearing spandex and capes? It's a story about a young man trying to beat the odds, trying to be a hero in an extremely flawed world, and having to do the impossible even if it means breaking the entire superhero mentality to achieve a goal. Or one could say the boss as well. Is it not about superheroes? Are many not fans and still enjoying it so far? Did it not breathe fresh air into the superhero space by telling a completely contrary story to what we have always known and thought about superheroes? And there are many out there that I refuse to mention. What I'm trying to say is that superhero fatigue is a vague concept. The term superhero fatigue doesn't really explain what we felt after Endgame. The dryness of the stories, the oversaturated content, and many others. It couples everything up into one. Since Marvel and DC are the juggernauts of superhero media, they represent everyone, which shouldn't be the case. Genres exist as a foundation. Directors come to these genres and reinvent certain elements to tell the stories they want to tell. When that isn't well planned out, when these directors and producers aren't given enough time to flesh their stories out, it leads to extremely poor products at the end. Basically, bad movies. Which to me is what people should actually be saying. Bad movies are the cause of this so-called fatigue, so to speak. If anything, Invincible, The Boys, My Hero Academia, and many other superhero genres out there prove that point. If the story and premise are good, anyone would watch and enjoy it. And this was in Marvel's face all along. They ignored that fact. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, Spider-Man No Way Home, The Batman, Suicide Squad, The Good One, Guardians of the Galaxy all proved that concept early on, right when the so-called superhero fatigue was at its highest peak. And yes, it seems Marvel and DC are understanding that now, and with their recent movies this year, it's clear to be the case. James Gunn completely redefined Superman, setting the character on course with the newly rebooted DCU, just hoping it doesn't lose momentum. Marvel has completely changed course, reinventing how they do things now and building the MCU toward a potential reboot, one that could set things right after Doomsday and Secret Wars. But only time will tell how things turn out in the future. Because if superhero fatigue really existed as much as people say it does, these recent wins wouldn't be happening. People wouldn't feel excited for any of this. Fans wouldn't care about Avengers Doomsday or Secret Wars or Spider-Man Brand New Day because superheroes are borderline boring and oversaturated now. They wouldn't be hyped for what's next. The truth is, superhero fatigue is a very nice word to throw around. It does in a sense explain the decline in audience enjoyment of superheroes, but it doesn't best justify it. If a movie is bad and no one wants to keep watching bad movies. That's how things work. If movies are good, people will watch and ask for more. That's how that works too. Superhero fatigue isn't real. Mediocrity fatigue is. And that's flexible because all it takes is a little sincerity, a little patience, and stories that remind us why we believed in heroes in the first place. So call it what you want, but the idea of superhero fatigue is vague to me. If a movie does well, people say we are back. If a movie does terribly, people say it's fatigue. That's too inconsistent for me, and that's why I believe the idea of superhero fatigue is a lie. But opinions are opinions. Let me know yours in the comments. What do you think of superhero fatigue? Is it a fact or is it a myth? And hey, if you enjoyed this video in any way or took anything from it, you can comment down below what it was, and please you can feel free to drop a like and subscribe so you don't miss any future upload or just to help grow the channel. But until then, I'm out.